wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Solitus tuo, usum carum, ungularum, delectatque contremescit me. Intra, intro, intro.
You ugly little bitch. I want to hold your
Ow.
hand.
Why are you so mean to us?
Who are you talking to?
Either. Both.
Sion Sono.
Welcome back to another episode of 13th and Elm. We're here every week. Come on, you know the drill. It's me. It's Bill. I'm Bill. Who are you guys?
I'm Rob.
I'm Mykel.
How you guys doing?
Doing well. You know, it's fun. Missed you.
Yeah.
Missed you?
I'm doing real well. We switched it up. We're doing a Saturday.
Saturday.
This will be uploaded one day
Sunday.
later. Sorry for the wait, Elmers. But yeah, I'm feeling good on a Saturday.
By the time you get home from church, this will be up.
Yep, that's true.
This week we watched Suicide Club 2001. Sion Sono, we talked about him last week. He's like a J-horror master. He's done some good shit. We'll get into whether we consider this to be up on par with the other stuff. I don't know if you guys have seen a lot of his other stuff, but we'll see. Hour and 40 minutes. IMDb gives a very short description of detective is trying to find the cause of a string of suicides. And is that description so brief because what the fuck is this movie about? What would you put? It's a lot.
What?
There's a lot going on.
This movie? I mean, I guess that's like a third of the movie. Is the the detective plot? I don't know. I don't know if this movie is for me. And I personally, it felt like a lot of stuff was left out or edited out of the movie, and like there were characters that were brought up and like didn't seem to like go anywhere, and it wasn't even that stuff wasn't answered. It was like the whole movie just seemed to go along with itself and within its own logic, and I don't know. There's like, okay, so there's like the suicide like happenings of like unrelated, but it seems to be large amounts of people, like 50 people at a time, and then there's the detective, and then
Usually like young people too.
yeah, and there's like a hacker, and then after that there's like a weird glam band thing.
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm saying. It's crazy, and I think it's one of those where there is a lot of random meaning and symbolism and metaphor, and it's one of those where it's kind of like you get to decide what you want it to be, which that kind of movie is not really my favorite because it's, I don't know, those movies to me they're like a little bit lazy because they're like, we can just leave a lot of shit open and just leave it up to the audience to, you know, figure out their own opinion or like what they think. And I think that's what this movie went for, and it did well in some aspects of it, but it's like, I don't like, give me something that it's about and do that.
I think that's really situational, whether or not it's lazy or a lack of technique, because it's actually quite challenging to leave so many doors open without revealing a hand and to do it well.
No, that's what I'm saying. There are movies that do it well. I just don't know if this one did it very well.
I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by this. Really like this movie. This shit was fucking dope.
I'm surprised by how quiet you're talking.
Well, my mouth isn't quite wet yet. So let me wet my whistle, take down some of this wonderful Liquid Death. Thanks again for sponsoring us. Keep sending us
free
cases
stuff
of water.
yes,
it's so
send
good.
us the agave-free severed lime flavor. Thank you.
Yep, or just the classic.
Also down with the Classica. That's nice too. Mykel,
Anyway,
what
you
did
love
like,
this movie.
What did you like the most about this movie?
I liked exactly what we were just talking about. I thought they actually did that really well.
Yeah.
Like, so I've seen 3 Sion Sono movies now, and this is by far the best one, and honestly, kind of like the only one that I've really enjoyed.
Was Prisoners of Ghostland one?
It was.
That doesn't count.
And
What was the second? What was the
Tokyo Gore
third?
Police, which is another one that's weird. This one is more narrative based, and I thought the
Yeah.
cinematography and the like soundtrack, like the score, was all actually quite engaging and like pretty powerful and suggestive. Like when having gone off of like Prisoners of Ghostland and Tokyo Gore Police as my immediate well to draw from, those are so over the top and cartoonish and kind of like, I don't know, frame by frame is almost like a different art piece or like a still. It looks like it's supposed to be some sort of graphic comic.
Right.
This actually had a narrative, and I felt like it was really pretty, and they felt like a police procedural for like the first bit. And I think that there was actually quite a bit of interesting commentary provided on one's self-identity and peer pressure and trying to conform and fit in and being a part of fads and trends. This movie, in a lot of ways, reminded me of Perfect Blue, which we all watched together, and I also know that we were kind of frustrated and confused with, and my appreciation for that movie grew as I have spent time away from it. But this movie I appreciated a little bit more while watching, and I think that was also, let's not beat around the bush, some great gore. Like, fuck. Great opening scene, mass suicides. Okay, so like trigger warning on this. Obviously, Suicide Club is the name of the movie. We're going to be talking about that a lot, and like graphically. Yeah, so fuck. I guess we should have started with that.
Starts off strong, yeah.
We'll edit that in.
It starts off with a big group of young school children, like middle school, high school, going down to a train station and all linking arms, and when a train comes, they move up past the line and they enthusiastically go 1, 2, 3, and they all jump. And it's like, we learn later that it was 54, but that's a lot. So yeah, like, and this is like opening credits.
Yeah, by the time this is done, which lasts a long time, it's like 6 minutes in.
Yeah. And the music during this was crazy. It was beautiful during the credits, and then during this part, it was kind of wild. It was like kind of like circus-y, kind of all over the place.
Circus-y.
But like, I don't know if like what played at the beginning was like the main theme or whatever, but that's the type of music that we get the most, and it is beautiful. It's like very melancholic, and I'm glad that you like this, because this is definitely not his best, but this is more like, this is the kind of movie that I know him for, which I feel like we talked about this just a few minutes ago off air. That
you've been telling me that a lot to watch.
Like Prisoners of Ghostland and Tokyo Gore Police are like him straying from his path. Like, it almost seems like he does like more dark, eerie, like drama, generational abuse, like type shit, which is like what Cold Fish and like Strange Circus and like his other stuff. So if you like this, you should definitely watch Cold Fish.
Oh, I plan to.
And listeners too, it is definitely more fucked up. Like, that was like another thing too. Like, I see this on a decent amount of like some of the most disturbing movies, and I definitely don't think it belongs there.
Have you seen Strange
Circus? Matter. I have, yeah.
How's that one?
It's weird. I mean, that one is like an anthology, pretty much. Like, we know ABCs of Death. Like, it's kind of like that, but instead of 26 segments, there's like, I don't remember, like 4 or 5.
Also seen Tag, right?
Yeah, Tag is pretty similar to this, but actually more like hyper violent. More just buckets of blood being fucking thrown.
This was pretty
violent getting their fucking heads
when
ripped off.
Was violent, but it wasn't like Tokyo Gore Police is just like non-stop buckets, like, you know what I mean? And it's almost like cartoonish. Like, this almost had more impact. And
it's like cyberpunk gore too, which is like kind of different, because there's like some solid special effects in this.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's made me more excited for Naruko's Dinner Table, which I know you've been bugging me to watch for a while. So I'm probably going to be more apt to do that on a more expedited timeline, because this was fun.
What'd you think of the opening sequence, that music, and then and then the mass suicide we roped in. We were like, okay, I'm ready. Because we've been on this kind of string of like 80s camp, lots of nudity, lots of goofiness, and this wasn't really funny or campy.
I don't know. I thought it actually was kind of funny. Like, actually, I thought this scene was like had more comedy to it than maybe you would agree with. But I don't know. Like, I was hooked immediately, and then, to be honest, like I just felt like I just lost interest the longer the movie went on. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm interested in that movie where there is kind of like a detective, like, and it's not like film noir, like that's not what it is, but like there is like you said, like a police procedural kind of.
Yeah.
And
so you like the first, I don't know, 20,
yeah, like
20 plus
25 minutes or so, and I don't know. Again, like a lot of this doesn't seem to go anywhere. Like he dies, like 40 minutes in or something.
Who?
The detective.
The main one?
Yeah.
And he dies in like the last 15 or 20. He definitely doesn't die in the first
himself?
40. The main guy, Kuragawa.
Yeah.
Or Kuragawa, I don't remember his name exactly.
Kuragawa.
That's in like the last 20.
Okay.
Which was like really
which was pretty crazy.
Good on screen.
It is. And then like there's the bat,
gunshot.
like what's her name?
The bat.
Kyo
Yeah, the
or
bat.
whatever. It's like I don't understand really what her purpose for the film is. She like brings attention to the website, I guess.
Okay, so this
Yeah.
is kind of what I really liked about this movie. So we're talking about how, like, is this lazy? Is it crafty? What does the movie mean? Is it trying to make big statements, or is it just coming off with that as an appearance? And I think one of the things that could be confusing or a struggle for some with this movie is, like, what is the cause of, like, the suicides, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, there's this theory that it's not suicides, it's murder. We even identify an individual as the source. Red herring, who knows? Watch the movie, we'll get there, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the movie, we're kind of left with some questions and maybe even some vague answers, depending on how you choose to look at it. But one thing I do know is we've had the influence of, like, the cell phones,
The
internet, and like the music, right?
Pop
Like the
culture.
J-pop, like it's so there's like all of these like sensory input things that can cloud or steal some of your like individuality. It's like don't lose your like self-identity, which is kind of like the suicide aspect of it. Like think of it as a more metaphorical thing.
The connection.
Yes. So I think that it's kind of ambiguous, but it's all connected, and it's mostly a representation of like pop media, peer pressure, social perceptions, and just, I don't know, being young and feeling like a fucking outcast. I know it sounds silly. Fucking I don't know, man. Honestly, I watched this movie yesterday, and I was just trying to like be distracted from what was probably like one of the most depressing days I've had in a really long time. Just to be completely transparent, it was for fine, like healthy reasons, whatever. But like, I was just in a unique headspace. I was watching this, and I was just strangely able to identify with a lot of what I was seeing on screen, which is a weird thing to say. Like, I know
what you mean, for sure. And apparently this movie came out very early after, like, a big media light started to, like, shine on the suicide problem in Japan. Like, Japan has, like, always had one of the highest suicide rates for many different reasons, and which is like what this movie is about, right? Like you could argue it's because of like the work culture, and that's part of it. The main detective doesn't get to spend a lot of time with his immediate family, and that ends up becoming an issue. It could be
patriarchal
because
household, because the suicide rates for men obviously in Japan
are way higher.
like crazy high. So there's and I think some of that's represented in this film.
Right, and like it could be because of like pop culture influence and stuff, and that's why we have that represented it as dessert, as like we'll get into more of that, or is it because they're young and impressionable and
Fads
on their
the
own
power of a
and
fad.
just a fad. So Sono definitely like, which was like kind of like fucked up. Like he definitely took that opportunity, like to make this movie, which is like, I mean, that's what filmmakers do. Like that's nothing new, but that's why it's like up to the viewer. It's like, why do you think like the suicide rates are so high in Japan? Here are like a bunch of the big reasons why we think it is in one movie, if that makes sense.
Honestly, some of that, like, it's quite different, but I fucking didn't know about this movie, and I didn't know what to expect, but I knew Sion Sono was going to bring something
Have you not heard of this?
Crazy. I had heard of it, and I reminded myself of that when I had saw the cover. I was like, oh, yeah, this
this
movie.
is pretty well known.
And it's obvious why. Obviously, I hate that I did that. But one of his earlier films of note as well, and I think this is kind of one that helped put him on the map. And it is like maybe not a darling to the critics, but I do think it's fairly well received. What I was going to say though is this movie is, I think it succeeded where Martyrs failed for me. And I know they're very different and they make different statements, but just that bleak, dark, questioning, kind of thought-provoking, stunning ending. Like I was more surprised and I was left more with my mouth agape at the end of this than Martyrs. I just feel like the way that everybody talked about how they felt at the end of Martyrs and what they expected me to feel, I did not experience. And at the end of this movie, I was like, fuck, dude, that was pretty good, actually. I wouldn't have minded 10, 20 more minutes of that. I wouldn't have...
What about a whole hour for a dinner table?
I mean, I don't know. I'm willing to. I want to
That shit's
watch
supposed
Dinner
to
Table.
be good, and I want to watch it.
This was good, man. It was interesting in a lot of ways that maybe Western horror has lacked until recently. There has been like this trend of whatever you want to call it.
More social commentary,
like elevated
in
horror or like post horror, which I think is a stupid name.
Post horror.
It's like way to just shit on like The Shining or The Exorcist, like everything that came before this, But I don't know. This movie was definitely ahead of its time,
woke.
I think.
The shit's woke.
And it did
the
at
young
times
listeners.
watch in many different fashions and not always and probably not even frequently as a horror film. But there's good gore. And it does follow like mass suicide, murder, manipulation, whatever you want to call it. It definitely fits subject matter wise, but like I said, a lot of it did seem like a drama or a crime procedure or
It's more like a mystery,
thriller. Yeah, right.
Which is kind of like how his other stuff is too.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. I don't have like a lot to add. I really didn't like this movie. Like,
did you guys watch it together?
No.
I guess not. No.
No, I don't know. I kept waiting for something to like. I was like grabbed initially with like the 54 suicide. Like that was cool.
Yeah.
And like, but again, like it felt kind of campy. And there's like circus music in the background, like blood
The
splashing all
music
over
there
everybody.
was kind of crazy.
What about like the belt,
and just
the like skin?
Oh
the,
my
like,
god, the
chain?
skin
belts,
rolls.
like those were cool. I thought like
Those
I don't
were
know.
interesting. Yeah.
But like I felt like it like brought up again like a lot of this is I guess metaphorical and like specific to Japanese culture, and I feel like I'm not like things I'm not getting, but like a lot of stuff got brought up, and it's like okay, so they like roll up skin rolls of like all the people, and they don't like people with tattoos or something, and
Well,
Yeah,
it's
that
like
was-
Japanese culture, though, dude. You don't get like you know what I mean? Like that's Yakuza,
yeah, of
like,
course, the
crime affiliated
yeah,
shit.
you can't go to public baths and all that, but it's like they're using like a lathe, and it's at the behind the scenes at a, I don't know, just like, but after like we got like past, I don't know, some of the gore and like started getting into like what I thought was more of a narrative film, and I was waiting to like kind of for things to like kind of link up, and then you get the red herring with Genesis.
Did you like Genesis?
Yes and no. Like I didn't really
Yeah.
care for like the rape scene. So, but where he's like playing music and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the white sack, like
yeah. Like I didn't really like that.
Yeah,
but,
they're just like in sheets
but
all
again,
in the
like
bowling alley.
that didn't seem to go anywhere either. He's like, well, give him the address, and I don't know, like. Even some of the gore was kind of cool, like when she's getting like cutting the radish, and
She cuts her fingers.
but it wasn't like particularly well done prosthetic. Like it was okay, like it looked okay, but like
Yeah.
the blood was like kind of shallow, like orange red, or at least it was on the copy I watched.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then the ending, Mykel, I couldn't be any more different. I just felt like, why? I don't know. Like I didn't need her to die, but it just didn't. It wasn't even closure. I just was like glad the movie was over. I really didn't like this.
Where are the parallel lines that you could draw to anything? I guess
I don't know. Like it reminds me kind of House, where like I feel like a lot of this is just stuff that's I don't even know if over my head, but it's like not for me, and I'm not getting what they're trying to say. Like
Right.
I get what you're saying with like what, you know, the different causes of suicide, and like it's commentary on it, and it's left up to the viewer. Like I'm not saying this movie doesn't have things to say. I'm not trying to say it's. I don't know.
You
It's
just
not
they
like
didn't speak to you.
I
It might
don't-
not have been trying to speak to you.
Might not have been trying to speak to me, but like I don't know. It's just like okay, I'm along for the ride, and like there was some funny aspects to it, and like there was a lot of music to it. Honestly, like way more than I expected. But shit, man.
Yep. Anyway, so I think that there is a good amount of cultural narration that maybe gets lost, but I think some of it is more global because it does speak about suicide on a whole. Now, it does put that in the context of like Japanese culture, and obviously that's a bigger, or not, I don't know, I don't want to quantify it in any way, but it's a problem that has been maybe more talked about in social space in Japan for a little bit longer, just because of the way their relationship with suicide and death is a little different than it is in the West. And I'll try not to speak too much on it because I don't know it.
Yeah, but that is a big part of it too. But yeah, like you said, it is a lot like House, where it's like, how are we supposed to like talk about this as, you know, like three white Americans when it's obviously like mainly appealing to the like culture and history of Japan.
Yeah, but I think that this is varied from House.
Oh yeah, I mean,
greatly in some aspects, but I also think that like hugely the narrative does kind of do what we're
I mean,
accusing
House
it.
was like more
But,
like about
like,
like
it's
war.
like a time.
This is like
It was
suicide.
like an isolated incident.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
this
yeah,
does
yeah.
speak not only for like young people, but also all people. You know, I guess I'm a male, and even though I might be like American and look different than the people on screen or have a different culture or whatever, like I did see a lot of that. Like a lot of causes that correlate to the male experience and suicide, because that's an experience that I've had. So like just kind of like that work-life balance expectation, and kind of like the, I don't know, I don't really want to get into like gender politics too much, but it's a crazy thing when you talk about life and death, and I think that that's a little bit more relatable than Houseu's like atomic bomb narrative.
Exactly, yeah.
But also cultural context is huge in this, and like there's so much that I can infer or assume was supposed to be in the subtext, but it doesn't speak to me the way that it's supposed to, and to sit and pretend that it does is one thing. But I thought it was visually engaging. It was fresh. It had something to say. It left me with questions, but not to a point of frustration. I would watch it again, and like some of the gore was fun. Plus, it tackled subjects that like you really don't see get tackled a lot in the West. This movie, as much as we're trying to say, is like, oh, like did it have something to say about the like? It's not a sensitive movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's graphic. I wouldn't watch it if you're triggered easily. I wouldn't even listen to this podcast, about it. It's pretty upfront about
there's
what it's going to contain.
Yeah, there's a lot of suicides.
Hundreds, literally. They count like.
Yeah, there's sexual violence, like we said. Like there is rape,
violence against children, violence against women, or child suicide and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Which is fucking wild. Like that, like the scene of the high school, which I don't remember the timeline exactly, but I'm pretty sure it's days after the initial opening scene, and they're like, 54 people, like, we can beat that, like, let's do it right now, like, we can do 100, and they actually end up getting, like, I think 6 people on, like, the ledge of the building, and some of them are like, wait, like, are we really doing this? And they, like, count, and 3 go, and then of the 3 left, it's 2 girls and the guy, and the guy is like, we have to do this, and like grabs one of the girls, and they go over together, and then like you're supposed to think, or like I at least thought, I was like, oh, this last girl is like not gonna jump, and then like a bunch of like faculty, other students like run up and are like, stop, what are you doing? And she says something along the lines of like, this is the suicide club, like we're the first charter, like, and then she jumps. And these are good scenes of, you see them jump, and you don't see them land, but you do get to see like
them
other children in class with just bodies falling and just buckets of blood being thrown at the window.
Yeah.
Which was good. And for this era, me, I love to laugh and poke fun at the crazy fucking internet stuff.
Oh my gosh.
But I couldn't really do that with this. Like it did, like they had, for as much stuff on the internet that there was, like it was all pretty good. Yeah. Like none of it was like silly. The main part of it is like that one weird website with the dots, and it's like, yeah, that's like a 2001 like fucking website. It's just like
an Angel Fire website, or
yeah, and like even the other one that the detective son shows him later, I was like, yeah, this isn't like over the top or silly, like when it's just like we get a lot of just blank screens with just like green text coming across. That's like how people just envision what the internet was for some reason. But no, it was just like some simpler websites, which is like what we got, which was good. And like the website was cool enough where there's like a bunch of dots. There's red dots and there's white dots, and we don't really know what the white dots are. We can assume, but whenever someone commits a suicide, a new red dot appears, and we as viewers assume that there's someone on the internet behind this, because the red dots appear before the suicides are talked about in the news. So there are like a couple scenes where they'll have it up, and like a bunch of dots will appear, and you'll be like, fuck, and then there's like a phone call or whatever, and it's like 200 students has jumped off the castle or whatever. I think that was like literally one of them, I'm pretty sure. So that's like the internet part, which is kind of like ahead of its time, because it is not really at all like social media, but you can kind of relate it
kind of is, and
to
it kind
that,
of has,
even though that didn't exist yet.
And it's kind of come around in, I mean, chat rooms and stuff are kind of like primitive social media in a way, right? I guess. I don't know. That's a whole nother tangent. But like, there's definitely a social influence available to an internet user in 2001 or whatever.
Yeah, but they didn't show any of that. Like they didn't show.
No, but
any,
they
like,
did show like a relationship to media, and like they were spending time on the phone and on the internet and other things. It wasn't like necessarily like they were in chat rooms are being talked to by like some omnipotent internet voice, which is
or even like
something
really
that
talking
happens.
to each other. You know what I mean?
Right. But I don't know. I feel like this. I just, yeah, I don't know. I think that the internet stuff was done pretty clean and pretty good.
It was.
I think that it was a little clunky sometimes with who is the bat and like why are we listening to Genesis and Dessert, because they all seem to be almost like little vignettes in and of themselves of like, oh, look at this social influence type of thing. And
yeah, there's like a decent amount of characters that have pretty big roles that like aren't introduced, and it's like we're supposed to know who these people are, but you didn't tell us.
I wonder if they're like parodies of like Japanese pop culture. You know what I mean? Like if you saw Prince, like a caricature of Prince, and he was called Knight and it was in a movie, like you would know what it was, even if it wasn't introduced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I wonder if any of these were like caricatures of like Japanese culture. You know, like who the fuck is Genesis or like whatever.
Maybe, but like as a viewer, it's just like, oh, it's just cutting now to these two girls on the internet, and like what are they, like who are they, what are they doing? They show where they're living, and it's like this nasty looking place, and they show a man in the other room, and it's like, who is that? Like, is that their friend, their father? Are they friends? Are they sisters? Like, well, yeah, one of them says she goes by the bat, but when we learn that she's the bat, like we don't even see her, and then she's seen a lot before we realize that that's even her. Like she says something and she's like, oh, like I'll stick with the bat, and I was like, oh shit, that's the bat. Like, okay, I remember that phone call 30 minutes ago, you know. And it was like shit like that, and the Genesis stuff was kind of crazy, but I also kind of liked it. Like I liked Genesis. He was like this like weird underground like glam punk group, which I don't
honestly this is so fucking crazy, but he was like Powerline from a Goofy movie. You know, like, tell me I'm wrong. Like it was like it's a different character, but it was like kind of the same shtick.
I don't know. Like I read some reviews after this movie because I was like, I don't think I got it. Like I don't like. I felt like I like missed like I feel like I missed like a lot of a movie.
Was there anything there? Because I didn't read any of this stuff.
I read one, and it was
lot.
good. And like honestly, it was good enough that I was like, that's all I needed. And I wonder if it's the same one. Was it on IMDb?
There were a couple on IMDb that I read. Like a lot of them were very praiseworthy, and there were a good amount that were the opposite. And
yeah.
I don't know, like talking about the movie being like highly allegorical and metaphorical, and like talking about suicide, and like maybe not saying anything in particular about it, but like giving some lenses to look through it at.
Yeah, because there's a lot about like, oh, is this a crime?
Right.
Like, is it?
And it
not?
doesn't make sense because like suicide doesn't really make. I mean, like there's causes, but it's like it's a nonsense. It's like a nonsensical, you know, like to a certain extent, like the choice,
right.
the actions, and all that. But a lot of it too, like after hearing your guys' take on it and like some of the like less favorable reviews, it does make me think about kind of like older Americans being like, well, all the gun violence, it's all because of video games. It's all this, like it's not like pop culture doesn't have an effect on people. It extremely does, especially social media and like being bombarded with it. Like I'm not saying that's not a thing, but it just seems to be like it's all these foreign influences. It's this guy that looks like Prince who's like queer and has like blonde hair and he lives in the sewer and like, you know, and all the music, the J-pop, like it's these girls and then, you know, it's all
the
over
internet.
the radio, it's on the internet, and like, oh, it's these outside influences that are not culturally traditional that are
but
like,
that's like such a real fear that's been manifested in like humanity and history so many times. And if you want to talk about like a culturally threatened society, like Japan is very like they take their culture very seriously and they're pretty insular. They are an island. They're like made up of like 98% Japanese. Like that's another like cultural subtext thing that I'm going to try not to speak too much on because I don't know, but I'm also trying to like imagine how that might have some influence here. And
yeah, because like suicide,
that's interesting that you said that, honestly.
Like has gone through like I don't know how to say this either, but like different waves, like in ancient Japan, it was like seen as honorable, and then it's like taboo, and it's like you don't like talk about it because of the main like religions and stuff. So there's like a lot of that. It's definitely one of those movies that, like, if you were to watch it multiple times, you definitely catch something new every time and be like,
think
oh
it's
shit,
intended
like
to be watched multiple times.
yeah, and like I
don't think like
would
Tokyo
probably
Gore
watch
Police
it again. I'm not definitely not going to watch it a lot more. But yeah, it definitely is one of those movies that, yeah, if I watched it now all the way through, if I watched it again, I'd be like, oh shit, like I didn't catch that the first time. Like whatever, which I think is a sign of like a good movie. Like, I mean, we talk about this movie a lot on the pod, but like Midsummer,
Yeah.
like I've probably seen that 7 or 8 times, and I'm still finding new stuff when I watch it. And I don't think this is, going to have the same replay value for me personally, but I do think that is hard to do without it being obvious. So I appreciate that.
This movie was surprisingly subtle, if that could be said. Like, I know that there's
for it being called Suicide Club and it being full of suicide. Yeah, there's a lot of subtle subtext and stuff. Like I feel like I know what
more
you mean.
so than like Prisoners of Ghostland and Tokyo Gore Police, and like
that's what I'm saying. Like this is
aesthetically, they
like
could be very similar. Like if to the unacquainted eye, like if you just view all gore movies or exploitation genre as surface level smut, then like it might not be that different. And I get what you're trying to say, whatever. But I'm telling you, as somebody who's watched a good amount of this shit and watched both, like some of the stuff from the same director's catalog, this had a different feel and it had a different narrative, and I honestly appreciated it. And this is at the top of one of my more favorite J-horror movies. Like realistically, I like this a lot more
you
than
have
a
to watch his
lot of
other
J
shit because I'm telling you, like the ones that you have seen are like the outliers. Like this isn't the outlier.
Right. I mean, it's only 2. I've seen 3 of his movies. He's got a wide catalog of shit. Like I'll see what he's done. I do want to see a handful of them, like Cold Fish, Strange Circus.
And Strange Circus are both really good, and they're both like this, not like like crazy cyberpunk or just awful like Prisoners of Ghostland was. Movie's bad.
Yeah, wasn't my favorite. I was excited for it, and you got Nick Cage, but it didn't really grab me. I honestly didn't pay attention to most of it because it was pretty awful. But I don't know. There's a lot to say about this movie. There's a lot to not say about this movie, both for the sake of like spoilers and trigger warnings. Some of it's like best to be seen if you're a fan of practical effects. I think there's a lot of good stuff in this movie. And then also some of it is up to interpretation, so you try not to say too much of what you think because I don't want to taint somebody else's viewing experience, but it's definitely a movie I'd be comfortable recommending to a certain type of viewer. It's definitely not for many people.
Yeah.
But like if you're into this and you hadn't seen it, I'd be like, oh yeah, check that one out. You might not even like it or want to watch it again, but it's worth a watch, I would say. You might disagree, Rob, but you gave it a watch either way, and I don't know, so what are your 2 cents?
Pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like this movie very much at all. I thought, I don't know.
I can't really say I'm surprised.
It's.
Though I did think that you would like Genesis and his crew.
I mean, I like the aesthetic of it.
Yeah.
It
was kind of like.
But yeah, like I don't know, dude. It's like a rape scene and then like a bunch of things moving in bags. I don't know if that was animatronic or animals.
Yeah, I think there was supposed to be some other people and then also like some animals because one of them was like a dog that he obviously just like stomps on.
Yeah.
For no reason but to be like intimidating and.
I'm the Charles Manson of Japan.
Exactly. He's like, as far as like the other influences in the movie, like the internet, peer pressure, whatever. I feel like his character thinks that this is all happening because of him, but in reality, he's just kind of like a piece of shit, like
synchronicity.
Gutter punk that is like, killed a couple people and thinks that he has a lot more influence than he does, like kind of like Charles Manson, because like Charles Manson was like kind of like a bitch.
Yeah, but like he did actually like, convince people to murder. You know.
Yeah,
Like
and Genesis probably did too. We didn't see that, but he's got like a gang with him, and one of him does kill that girl.
I assume that girl dies. Yeah.
Yeah, she gets stabbed to death for sure.
But there was stuff I did like about this movie. Like there was a montage probably about halfway through that was, again, it's like more like the campy kind of stuff, but it's like a bunch of montages of like people killing themselves, which sounds fucked up. That I thought that was like funny and campy, but there's a scene where they're like in like a TV show and they like just stabs himself like in the
comedian.
throat. Yeah, and like
we get the street vendor that overdoses
and opening up the oven and like
that was honestly pretty brutal, and like that was kind of funny though, and I don't even think that was accidental. I think there was an element of slapstick there. Even
I think most of the gore was slapsticky to me.
Kind of.
And like
a little bit.
When the detective comes home and then his daughter shows up and she's like covered in blood and he's like, I'm exhausted. She like walks. I don't know. Like I thought it was funny, and like, but I also think that Midsummer's funny, and you guys don't agree with that. So, but
I can see how that was like kind of funny that she was literally drenched in blood, like Carrie at the prom.
Yeah.
But he doesn't turn around.
And then she just walks away, and like even towards the end of the film, when it's extremely clear because they keep hinting at desert or whatever the girl band's name is, they keep hinting about it, and they're always playing on the radio or like on TV or when stuff is going on. I thought it was kind of like, have you guys ever heard of
Twice?
You guys ever heard of
Twice.
Snow Crash? It's
No.
a book by Neil Stephenson. Sci-fi book. Anyway, it's about like a computer virus that you could look at if you knew code, and it would like infect your brain with like a mental illness of sorts. And
That's
it's
crazy.
Like, and it's like tied into like Babylonian magic and mythology. It's like a really cool idea, and it's also like, in my opinion, poorly executed. But
I want that to be a movie.
But I thought that that's kind of what they're going for. Like if you heard the song and saw them dance, and like then you would be susceptible to this sort of like mind virus thing where you want to kill yourself, because it doesn't seem to like have any rhyme or reason to like who it picks, although it does seem to be younger people mostly, but there's still like older folk, like the mom.
Yeah, like you said, the montage was pretty much all adults.
Yeah, and like the mom cuts her fingers up, like all that, but there's also like then the little girl like doesn't react really. She's just kind of like, oh, mom, it's silly.
Mom's being funny.
Yeah, like that sort of thing. So I think if it just had a little more cohesion, I don't even need it to tell me what's going on, but like just something more to tie it together, because towards the end of the film when they're doing all this and like she's going through the boyfriend's room and like looking at all the posters, and she's doing like weird, I don't know, like smartphone numerology where she's like using the letters to spell out the numbers. It spells out suicide. Then she gets the code to the
back door at the
concert. But also the girls don't seem to have like any ulterior motive for like, or even aware that this is going on, right?
The band,
yeah. They don't seem to ever show up like in.
I kind of like that, how it was like, the numbers on like their jersey, and then how many fingers they were, because it was like, a 6, and you would so you go to the 6 and hit it 3 times, and it'd be an S, and then
which
the
was like
next
a fun little fucking like blast from our past. You
know
what I mean, some of our younger Elmers have no idea what the fuck we're talking about. Push 2-3 times to get a C.
But if like T9 Gematria is like the high point of this film for me, like I don't know, it's just.
Oh, it definitely wasn't. It was just like a little piece of flavor that I enjoyed. I like this movie for many other reasons.
I enjoyed that.
But I just thought that like overall, like the gore was like there was a decent amount of it, and like some of it was okay, but a lot of it was a little hokey and campy, which is I like that kind of shit.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of literally just throwing buckets of fake blood at windows.
But
it was a lot.
I don't know, like it wasn't campy enough for me to like be like, oh, I like this.
Yeah,
and what didn't speak to me in any particular way more for me to think deeper about it, I guess, until after. It's
probably
I saw
a good thing.
And I don't know, it just kind of comes off as like I felt like stuff was edited out, or I don't know enough about the culture to get it.
There might be more. I did a little research, and I only read about one scene being cut, and it wouldn't have added anything.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what it was because it was just like a standalone thing. But I do remember something like one of the, honestly, maybe the only times that I laughed out loud during this was when, I don't remember her name because like I said, like the characters aren't, most of them
They're not
aren't
even
really
important.
introduced very well. But like her boyfriend tries to kill himself and lands on her in the
Yeah,
street,
in the street.
and she just like brushes
Shakes
it
it
off.
off.
She's like, "Ow, my ear!" and then just walks into a cafe and was like,
Yeah.
"Can I get a coffee?"
Again, like a lot. I feel like this movie is funny. Like it's like
That part was definitely supposed to be, yeah. I mean,
Um,
she literally, her boyfriend is dying in the street behind her, and she walks into a
Or-
coffee shop and is like, "Can I get a coffee?"
What about when the bat is like still in a fucking bed sheet and decides to like type on the computer without like taking the bed sheet off?
Yeah, she's so proficient with computers that yeah, she can blind type.
I can't just like,
Yeah, I was kind of trying to figure out how that worked. I tried not to get stuck on it because it was
didn't matter.
silly.
It was so
Because
silly.
it was like, that's a sheet. You should be able to just take that off. And if you're not able to take that off, that means that they put you in a sheet and like sewed it close, like,
also, like,
which
guys-
is also crazy.
Guys.
They also like knew where she
What
lived.
the fuck?
Like knew where she lived was like behind you, huh? And like
That
kidnapped her.
That was the silliest internet part, was that they got a message that just said, "Look behind you," and they looked behind you, and it was literally just 3 men in their room, and they didn't know. And it's like, where did they send that message from?
Doesn't matter.
Their phone, I guess, but that,
Doesn't matter.
like, you didn't have phones that could browse the internet in 2001.
BlackBerry, maybe. That's
I
still
don't think
even early for a
01.
BlackBerry.
Yeah. So yeah, that was like the one technology thing. I was
And-
like, that's kind of goofy, but it was just whatever. Get
I also
them
wanted
to
more out
the
of the
pleasure
like
room.
the fucking rolls of
room.
skin. I wanted there to be like weird fucking witch magic nonsense in the bowling bags, whatever the fuck that they were doing with those white bags.
the little handbags. I was
And like
the first time they looked into it and it didn't show it. Of course, I'm thinking like Brad Pitt. I'm like, what's in the box?
What's in the bag?
And when they
Nieta?
first show it, I'm like, "Oh my god, that is a huge fucking cinnamon roll." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, that is like what it is. It's a cinnamon roll." It's literally. I mean, it's like, which was kind of interesting, but like,
it didn't go anywhere.
I mean, it kind of did, because at the very end,
Homegirls.
like you get the girl with the
Butterfly
butterfly tattoo, and then the sixth link, which ends up being the sixth train, which is one of the last mass suicides. The sixth link in the newest Skinnamin roll is the detective's son, and that's like part of the reason is just like, oh, like he was so concentrated on work and trying to solve this case that he didn't realize the issue was happening in his own household as well, which is why, spoiler alert, he ends up killing himself too after like getting a phone call from like children, which are
Coughing.
yeah, which I kind of thought there was going to be like a reveal where there was going to be a child in person and we were going to see him and they were going to have that cough, and that was going to be like the little subtle, be like, oh, that's that kid. But that never happened. But we got these weird phone calls and it was all about being connected. It was like, do you feel connected to yourself? Do you feel connected to your boyfriend, your parents? Like, if you killed yourself, you'd still be connected, so why not just do it? Like, that type of thing, which is why in like the mass suicides we get a sense of that with like the hand holding and like the counting down is like, oh, like they're finally connected with each other instead of connected to the internet or connected to work or whatever. Like the first time they actually feel connected to someone else is when they're holding hands with them to end their life together, like kind of thing. The very end was kind of strange when she uses that same code that she gets from the dessert poster and just like runs into that room, and then she's like on stage in front of like 20 children that are just asking her questions, like
Are
pretty
you
much like
connected to
those
yourself?
questions. Yeah. And
Yeah.
she's like, yes, I am. And they like start
Clap.
clapping, and I guess she's supposed to be someone that realizes that she learns from like the innocence of these even younger children. That's like, oh, I don't need to be this tuned into work or pop culture or the internet. She's like, yes, I am connected to myself. And they're like, yay, finally someone that like cares about themselves and human connection more than like this other shit. And she lives is like what I got out of it, kind of. But it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
And then like the last 3 minutes is just a music video.
Yeah,
of Desert's new song.
I watched it waiting for something to like them to kill themselves or something.
Yeah, I watched the whole thing too because I mean it was kind of a bop, but I also thought that something else was going to happen right at the end as well, which honestly he probably did that on purpose. You know, like wanted us to think was like, oh, something's going to happen, and force us to watch all the credits.
Smart, clever.
Sexy.
But yeah, I mean, dessert being spelled a lot of different ways was like interesting because it's like introduced as dessert, like sweets, which you can see as being like, oh, it's like a good thing, but only if you know how to limit it. Like too much of dessert is bad, and we see it as like desert, which is like, I mean, people live there.
Oh, you think
willingly.
that's intentional?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought so.
I thought it was just honestly sloppy.
I thought each one was like, and then because there's like desert and there's des art.
Yeah.
Which could be like the destruction of art.
Or like
or nothing.
Poor mistranslation.
Or nothing, yeah. Or, yeah, I mean, literally it could have been that.
I thought it was just a bad continuity error.
It definitely could have been.
Being a Japanese to English, you know.
Oh, it definitely very well could have been, but, and to be honest, like as much as I want to say, like I thought of all that on my own, I read that somewhere. So that very well could be, you know, someone just looking into it too much, and it is just it translated different ways at different times, and that's all. But I mean, yeah, there was a lot of stuff I liked about this movie, but like, yeah, like you said, it's not all connected very clearly. I remember the part of just like the people in the street holding up signs and being like, what is what is that? Like that didn't really fit in with anything that was going on at the time. I mean, like I said, like it's definitely not my favorite of his films that I've seen, but it's more on track to what I expect from him. Cause like when I learned that, first of all, that we watched Prisoners of Ghostland and that it was him, I was like, what the fuck? I was like, Prisoners of Ghostland and Coldfish were directed by the same person. Like that's insane. And this was more what I expected from him. And like Tag is even like, you would definitely like Tag. You would like Coldfish more than this, and you would like Tag more than this, because Coldfish is like darker and more fucked up and disturbing, and Tag is like way more like campy, violent and like campy and fun. Like lots of school girls just getting their fucking heads like ripped off and shit. But yeah, that's not this movie. And yeah, I remember it cutting it randomly. There's so many cuts. This movie, hard cuts. Cut it hard. Like there's a lot of just like, where are we now? We're in like a chicken coop, and there's like naked women getting their skin cut off of their back, and it shows that for like 30 seconds. And it's like, what is that? And it's like, who was doing that? Where is that?
The medieval blacksmith?
Maybe.
He's in that scene.
What? Who's the medieval blacksmith?
The medieval blacksmith with like a mask who has the lathe, the handheld like plane,
the machine
or
that's made to cut out a 10-centimeter part of flesh or whatever.
It's made to like smooth like a plane of plank. But yeah, you could use it.
Okay,
for
see, I
skin.
didn't. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember it just like cutting to that for like a minute and being like, wait, what was that? Like, who was that?
Pretty fun though. I mean,
yeah,
as
no,
much
like
as
I
it
didn't.
was jumbled and didn't make sense. Like I wasn't needing it really to make sense.
Like, I mean, we've watched some fun, goofy 80s movies recently that are like way shorter than this, and this was like the first movie in a while that I feel like I wasn't continuously checking to see how much longer there was left in it. Because even though I was like kind of confused, I was still interested, and I was like, I was into it, and I was waiting for a resolution, and I was actually interested to see what was going on. But even like, 75 minutes of nudity and chainsaws, like at some point I'm like, holy fuck, there's still 20 minutes left in this.
To be fair, I didn't think that was a very good movie either.
What would you be more likely to rewatch?
Prisoners of Ghostland.
Really?
Yeah.
Of all three?
In between Suicide Club and Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, you would watch Prisoners of Ghostland again.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
wouldn't
whatever.
rewatch this movie. And
I would, but it would be a while.
I'm not like mad that I watched it. I'm not like, I don't feel like I need my time back. But
No.
I just didn't really care for it, and I don't know, like
No.
I don't get it.
No.
Like I want to say this movie's pretentious, trash, and disjointed, and like not worth the price of admission, but that's not really true.
I definitely don't think it was pretentious. It was kind of all over the place.
So
you could argue, but I don't see an argument about it being pretentious.
You should go online,
and that's coming
there's a lot
that
of
I am pretentious. Just ask that guy on Reddit. Hey guy on Reddit, if you're listening, fuck you, little boy.
Google Jared Dandridge.
Jared Dandridge.
Yeah, why don't you Google Jared Dandridge before you talk to me,
before
little
you
boy.
fucking talk to me again,
little boy. That's such a fucking rude thing to say.
I mean, that's why I said it. I mean, me, I love J-horror, especially Japanese extreme horror. I did think and want this to be more extreme. Like, I wanted this to be fucked up, and like, it's definitely more disturbing and fucked up than like most mainstream horror, but I wanted this to be fucking brutal. So that might have, tampered my expectations a little bit, because I sat down and I was like, I'm ready to go, like, pull out some intestines and make them walk across the room, like give me like needles, do the eye, like some crazy shit, and didn't really get much of that. I mean, there is some solid kills, some solid gore, but I mean, I enjoyed this. I didn't love it. Are you guys ready to? Do you guys want to rate it, or do you have more to add? I've
said what I have.
I took so many notes. I don't know why I keep doing this. I did this for a while and then stopped, and now I'm doing it again. I have like 100 notes, and I probably touched 3 of them. Well, I'll start. Sono, love you, bro. If you're listening, you make some good movies. You make some weird ones. You make some bad ones. This one was an in between for me. I would watch it again, but it would be a while. 67. I said it.
Yeah, not for me. Didn't care for this one. Some alright gore. Like, just like the finger stuff was okay.
And like finger stuff at the pod.
It's kind of funny. There's funny bits. But overall, just not enough substance there for me to really sink my teeth into. And I don't know. I wouldn't watch this again, and I'd probably only recommend it to like you guys. So
fair.
50. Yeah.
I like this movie apparently more than my 2 co-hosts, but I enjoyed it quite a bit and think that there's a lot of style and substance. I think there's a narrative. I think there's fun gore, great music.
I
really
like the score.
liked this pick, and it wasn't one that I would have gotten to this quickly on my own, and it was a lot of fun. I don't think it's without its faults. It's far from a perfect movie. I might be singing its praises a little strongly, just to kind of play devil's advocate, and because maybe my expectations were low. But overall, I would absolutely watch this movie again, and I'm still going to rate it pretty well, actually. I'm going to give it a 76.
Wow.
I liked it. But I will also be picking next week's movie.
Yeah.
Who? You will?
Yeah, and I will. For 3 weeks, we did some 80s gore slasher, cheesy, nudie movies, and then we picked this J-horror. And I'm not going to stay in that theme at all. I'm going to make a lateral move.
Where we going?
We're going to the United States.
United States.
2014.
Oh, it's a talkie.
It's a movie that's been described as a modern classic. I think we've all seen it. I've definitely seen it one time.
Wait, 2014 modern classic that we've all seen. You've seen it once?
I really like it. I haven't seen it since probably 2016. And I'm just going to announce it. It's kind of like a post. It's kind of like a... Well, you guys started talking like you were going to guess. Like
I thought maybe we were going to get another hint.
Okay, well, I would say...
Not that you have to give us
Okay, I would say it is kind of the one and only post-slasher movie. And it's kind of like the last slasher. Although it's not typical. It's not a typical slasher formula. Even though I argue that it is. That doesn't help, and I'm just going to waste no more time.
Yeah,
and I'm going to say
it?
it's 2014's It Follows.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
You're super disappointed by that, I could tell. You don't like that movie, huh?
I am interested to revisit it. I've seen It Follows probably 3 or 4 times for whatever reason. But people do fucking love this movie.
I think it's really good.
I do remember liking parts of it a lot, and I also remember hating parts of it a lot, and I haven't seen it in a while.
Have you seen it, Rob?
I've seen it a couple times, yeah.
Yeah. I am interested in getting into this one because over the last couple of years, I've really, really watched and logged a lot of fucking horror, and there's some tips of the hat in this film that I don't know that I caught the first time around, and I'd be interested in watching. Also, like I said, it's kind of like a slasher movie, right? Not in the typical sense, but we haven't had a good slasher in a long time. You know, really, the craze has been dead for decades, but this is like one of the last ones. You could say like Your Next is kind of a slasher. Mm-hmm. It's also a different formula, but
I was kind of thinking that, but I couldn't remember what year it came out. And I was like,
2012, I believe, is Your Next.
Holy shit, that movie came out 10 years ago?
I know. Yeah. It's crazy, right?
That's insane. I would have guessed like 2018.
Dude, fuck, the pod was going in 2018. Not quite.
Fuck, Your Next is so good. But
yeah, so I'm excited to revisit this one because I've watched a lot more John Carpenter movies. I've watched a lot more of the Friday 13th movies more recently. I've seen some of the things that this movie kind of, you know, pays respects to. Some of those 80s synthesizer heavy soundtracks and stuff like that. I want to watch this movie again for a while. I've considered doing it for the pod, and I've not picked it because I know we've all seen it. But I don't know. We've been in a different space of the horror realm for a while, and I thought that this one was a little bit more modern and a little bit easier to watch too. It's not super crazy, but I do think there's a lot of narrative in this movie about obviously
STDs and shit. Yeah,
not just STDs, but I think like sex, culture, sexuality, who you trust to have sex with, not just from a like STD like health standpoint, but just like
a sexy standpoint.
Yeah, but like a safety and a vulnerability standpoint, and also like a predatory standpoint. I think this movie deals with bigger themes in sex than just STDs, and it'll be
absolutely
interesting to revisit that and talk about it next week. But that's next week. This was this week. It was a good pick, like I said.
This week.
Thanks.
I'm glad you liked it. In front
of us.
Yeah. Sorry, you didn't love it.
It's okay.
Well, I love you both.
It would be boring
and
if
I
we all
love
agreed.
all 7 of the Elmers.
True. Yeah, no, I'm excited for
sleepy,
follows,
dopey,
actually.
Mopey,
angry, mopey,
smoky, and
copey,
pokey,
Smokey
and ropey.
Pokey.
Yeah, which one of you is out there smoking and roping?
Me.
Speaking of throwing rope, let's
end this and throw some rope.
Yep.
Let's wrap it up and throw rope.
Yep.
Clean up your mess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
watch two films. Come on, watch two films.